welcome all. We are at the current episode of Freedom Hub Working Group. I am your host and my co-host Charles Froman. We're sponsored by a variety of organizations of late, and also wanted to let you know that this is the spot where all the activists and entrepreneurs tend to collide, where we're disrupting everything wherever we can, but the whole purpose is to make everything better, not just to be wreaking havoc like others like to contribute. We are recording all these for posterity. They are, until such time they get banned, available on the following channels. And like I said, we have some sponsorship. I'll show you what we're doing here a little bit. Before that, though, let me show you. This is one of the great little sponsorship situations we've got going. Sorry about that. This is with what we've discovered, and we're always on the prowl for the best of the best. They're really the only bioactive hemp product in the marketplace, meaning that it's actually a live product, not inert like basically everybody else's are. And in that instance, we're also been able to negotiate with them to allow our members to be able to get a special rate of, instead of like 5 or maybe 10%, you're going to get 15% off this product if you use this code, which matches where we're on right now, your Freedom Hub number 4, meaning 4 o'clock Eastern. So that's how this matches. Here's the site as an example. You'll see there's a lot of stuff on there, some unbelievable videos and the like. So you'll want to check it out. You'll see for yourself why it's such an amazing situation, and you'll get a chance to sample it out a little bit. Now, as I did indicate, we are recorded. So these are the different channels. We're on BitChute, Brighteon, and typically on YouTube, although sometimes we have some issues with videos that we post over there. But for the most part, we're there. And then at the same time by your Freedom Hub, which is where you can find out about a lot of other separate things. But now let's talk a little bit about what we've got going on today. So this will be pretty interesting, and I'm going to have to let the authors give us a little bit of a background myself, because they're not my guests, so I'm not as up to speed, and Charles is on vacation this week, lucky for him. But we're going to learn a little bit about the ancient Sumerians and stuff, and this is not a common topic in the news, as where we've been through history and in prior generations. And it's so funny, seemingly everybody always just notices the time we currently live in, and often people think, oh, you know, years ago they only had candles. People must have been idiots in those days, or primitives and whatnot. And really, we're all the same, all these generations, the same intelligence and everything, just have different tools and stuff. But we've always built on things. That's why there's old sayings and wives' tales and the like, that we've built on the histories of the past, even if we've lost sight of them. But they do exist. And so we're going to have the privilege tonight of hearing from 2 different Sasha and from Janet Lessin. And these are a couple of little things that they've got. They've got some great books we're going to talk about a little bit. I give them control of the screen. They have a little audio site, as well as actually a podcast, a radio site. So he'll talk to us a little bit about all of those things. So I'm pretty excited about seeing what we've got going on here tonight. So hold on one sec. Let me switch the screen over. And Sasha, you now have control.
Aloha, I'm Dr. Sasha Lessin. I want to tell you about ancient Sumerian, and that's Sumerian means from ancient Iraq, scrolls that my teacher Zecharia Sitchin translated, and that say how people that dictated these scrolls made our species, and the good things that they gave us, the problems that they left us with, and some of the promises they made seem to have all been collected by my teacher, Zecharia Sitchin, and I'm going to tell you a bit about them. Some of the stuff's operating today. These guys were bigger than the Sumerians of their day, the people of Iraq. They were, you know, maybe as much as 7 feet tall, and of course, even taller than that in the historical exaggerations that take place. So that's one of them on the right, and some of us on the left. And what Zecharia Sitchin did, he had this collection of this story that one of these big guys dictated to his scribe. And it's this one guy's version of what the history of our race and the planet from when they got here 450,000 years ago to the present gave us. So we're going to look at just some examples of first of all, what benefited us Well, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them. They gave us genes, they gave us science, they gave us technology directly, and there's a lot of stuff we imitated. They gave us crops, livestock. They gave us entheogens, beer and wine from the get-go, and they sort of set the things rolling with a social structure that eventually we find widespread to this day in many ways. So let's look at the first of these perks, I call them. They gave us life. Yeah, we wouldn't have been there if it wasn't for them. And there's several different stages in which they gave us life. There was two sets of Adam and Eve's, one from 300,000 years ago and another from 200,000 years ago. And then there's other major incursions of their genes into our species when their astronaut corps revolted and ran away with a bunch of people from our line. And then there's Noah's line, and we'll go into each one of those in some briefness. And the way our species came about, the Anunnaki, that's what they call themselves, that means people that came from the sky, came here for gold for their planet. They wanted the gold to float into their atmosphere to plug, they would turn into monoatomic gold, and they floated up to plug a hole in their ionosphere that they had created by thermonuclear war. So when they found gold, they landed in the Persian Gulf. They found the gold flecks there, traced them down to Southeast Africa, and found lots of gold. And then they had volunteers from their planet come and dig, and they dug in the mines for decades. And they were getting very restive, and they started to be almost mutinous, and they wanted more beer. And in the meantime, there's all this pressure on them, and the head scientist, Lucifer, as he's called in modern times, his name was Enki in those days, said, "Don't worry, boys, I'm going to get you out of here. I've got just the thing. Just withhold the gold shipments, and the boss, Yahweh, his name was Enlil in those days, Yahweh and his son Ninir will come down here, and you can tell them your grievances and tell them forcefully, and it'll look like a crisis, and then I'll save the day." In the meantime, Lucifer was interested in another human that was running around Southeast Africa, Homo erectus, the ancestor of Bigfoot. And this was a very interesting person. They didn't talk, but they communicated telepathically, and they were letting all the animals out of Lucifer's traps. And he looked at that. He said, "Wow, it'd be nice if we could be less dominance oriented. We're just we from Nibiru are just so obsessed with hierarchy and who's on top. We don't feel each other. If we could have a little empathy for each other like these creatures, I bet I could put some of their genes into a hybrid, and yeah, I got a good plan." And so Lucifer and his sister lover Lilith and his son Thoth, they created hybrid clones, which the Nibiruan women put in their wombs. The female doctors were, first of all, creating clones. They made a boy clone. The first boy, which had one mother, Lilith, was just like a little Nibiruan boy, except that, he had a foreskin, which Nibiruan boys didn't have, and he was brown. It said red-brown like the clay of Africa. He had dark eyes. The first girl, well, this is Adamu, the original clone master. In this big debate when Lucifer saved the boss who came down to see why the gold shipment had been stopped and was about to have his son blast the rioters away, Lucifer stepped in and said, no, you don't have to do this. We'll make a servant race. Servant race? The boss says there's no such thing. That's slavery. That's not allowed. So they brought the whole issue to their dad up on Nibiru. They communicated with him, and he said, you can make clones, but don't make breedables. So that was the deal. Well, the first girl, they made a girl so they could at least have sex, and they also wondered what would happen. This had a different mother. This was Lucifer's wife, Damkina, And the first, so she has different mitochondrial DNA. So the first girl, so the record says, was called Tiamat. That's the first Eve. And she has sandy blonde hair and blue eyes. So right from the get-go, our species was brown and white. Now, Tiamat was raised just like any other girl, but her parents, all three of them were the smartest people in their whole society, and they gave her lots of love and attention, and gave Adam lots of love and attention. And the boss, Yahweh, says, "Bring him up to your place in the Persian Gulf, Enki, and I'd like to see this. The clones you made." Well, she wasn't. They had made her secretly fertile, and she had taken a trip with an entheogenic substance, a dimethyltryptamine substance, probably in Lilith's garden, and had a Satori experience with Adam. And she was not only fully conscious, but she just blew Yahweh's mind. And when he came over, he was enraged. He had given Lucifer permission to, and on the king's orders, to make clones. And here this little girl was pregnant, and she was bright as heck. When he came over, she said to him, "Hi, I'm Tiamat. Look what I'm making. I'm trying to figure this thing out. And look, I made this," just chatting. And so Yahweh, that's the guy in the middle there, threw an utter fit and had his son Ninurta come, and they threw Lucifer into restraints. And little Tiamat there is looking at her dad. The council didn't let Yahweh get away with that. They needed Lucifer too much, but that was a big deal. And so Yahweh said, "Well, okay, I get these things out of here, and don't you dare let them get educated. They're too smart. We're only going to be here. We're going to leave, and we're not even supposed to have any new races. It's against all regulations." Okay, so Lucifer knew, he says, that Yahweh was going to try to keep that's us, the hybrids dumbed down. And so he started selecting the smartest hybrids, and he told them the truth about everything. Look, we're not magic. We just know stuff, and we use machines, and we use energy sources that you'll learn about by and by. We're not gods in any way. We're just people, and we're going to teach you to think. And we got to keep this secret. We got to act like we're dumbed down for Yahweh, or he's going to off us. So the hybrids, for 100,000 years, they went in the mines, and they learned how to make their own crops and their own houses, and they were assisted with the Anunnaki, who have some kind of sonar technology. They would get gold, send it up the Persian Gulf, transship it, and off they would send it from their airport to Mars, where there was the ingots of the gold were shipped to Mars. Off Mars, it was shipped to Nibiru because it had a lower gravity. Mars was a good place to blast off from. Turned into monoatomic gold, floated up, and the hole in the atmosphere of Nibiru was healing. However, about 200,000 years ago, an astronomical event, probably Nibiru coming close to Earth on the same side as Nibiru came through. That's the mother planet every 3,600 years. And it caused huge devastation on Earth. And most of these slaves just wandered off, and they joined earlier, older slaves that had been put out to pasture, and they created their own societies in Africa. Yahweh got under pressure now to get more gold, because the disturbance on Earth was also disturbing to Nibiru, and so he wanted Lucifer to make better slaves, not ones that are going to wander off and get food for the slaves. What are we wasting our time getting this stuff? Let's grow some food. And so Lucifer said, "Okay, I'll make some better slaves. I know just how to do it." And he found two of the prettiest girls among the slaves, and he had kids with them. Now, one of the children, Adapa, was the boy. This is the second Adam, and he taught Adapa everything he knew. And he had Adapa running everything for him. He was running his own descendants, the descendants of Adam. He had his own aircraft. He designed a harp-like device which he could turn the wind with. He was a genius, and his dad used him to run everything for him. They had a great team going. So anyway, that was the second Adam. There's way more to the story, of course. The next big incursion after that, the second Adam and Eve, were the Nephilim, Adapa's descendants. And it started when Lucifer's son, known nowadays as Satan, but his ancient name was Marduk, realized he had been promised that he could be king of Nibiru when the last king, back, named Alalu, was no longer king, but he was usurped, and he wanted to align with the earthlings, throw the Anunnaki off Earth, and invade Nibiru, and take what he felt was his crown. And he married one of the daughters of the descendants of Adapa. So after Satan was allowed to marry this earthling, Sarpanit was her name, they were forbidden to ever come to Nibiru, and they got their kingdom to rule in Egypt, where Satan became Ra. But in the meantime, his allies who had come to his wedding, Shamgaz and the Nephilim, as they were called, nowadays, Igigi was their ancient name, they were astronauts, they eloped with the girls. It was probably prearranged. They took Lebanon, they had weapons, they said, you're going to okay our marriages and let us settle on earth. We want to have lives, we want to have families, we're not working for you anymore, and if you give in or you're through, because we've got the weapons. And so he gave in. And so the descendants of the Igigi, the Nephilim, became the Caucasians from the Caucasus Mountains. They settled in Canaan first. They were in Khazaria, and ultimately in the Indus Valley. And these are the descendants of the Nephilim, according to this account. Honor our unions or die. That's the message they gave Yahweh. So, life, that's the first perk. The second perk, they gave us lots of science. Some examples I'll give you quickly of the science they gave us. They gave us advanced astronomy, geography, biology, math, things like that. They showed us that they knew, and they showed us many, many ways. We know exactly what planets go around your sun, and this is way before Copernicus said we have a heliocentric solar system, and here's their relative size, and basically gave us many, many exact models of things they saw when humans that were around had no telescopes. So they saw them from space, is what they said. And what they said, and they gave models of it, is that their planet, Nibiru, was part of a solar system around a red dwarf called Nemesis, and it periodically, in its long, elongated orbit, came between Jupiter and Mars every 3,600 years, and at one point it actually speeded up. And in the latest Nexus magazine, there's also other scientific evidence that seems to corroborate something like that, Nibiru, or a second sun that we don't see. They said, by their records, that there's water on Mars, and they said it way before the stuff was written, 10,000 years ago. They said it way before our scientists verified water on Mars. They said they saw surface water. They landed on Mars. The air was thin, and they had to use more oxygen, but there was some air, and there were lakes. So they said that. They left messages and drawings and maps showing there were 4 rivers. This is geography, another thing. It said, look what's happened. There's these 4 rivers that come out in the Persian Gulf. Well, we only knew of 2 rivers, the Tigris and Euphrates. But when we apply LiDAR and sonar and stuff, there it is. In other words, they were telling us what they saw before our scientists had the records to check these kind of things out. They said what the landmass underneath Antarctic ice sheet looked like because they saw it. They said that was the cause of Noah's flood, and they saw it from Earth. That's how come they could draw it exactly. They did all kinds of biology experiments, and right now with our crimper technology, we're starting to be able to approach things like that. They made all kinds of hybrids. We're a hybrid, as we already talked. There's some rudiments of technology they gave us directly. They dug canals, ditches, and dams where they ran the thing, and they have advanced machines, but they also use a lot of people. They showed us how to make plows, carts, boats, kilns, forges to make bricks. They gave us writing and math, all kinds of rudimentary stuff. They had ways of generating power. They had laser and sonar tools, which we imitated and eventually are getting a hold of now, and all kinds of things that we're either coached or imitated in, including artificial intelligence, androids, submarines, scuba gear, rockets, and things like that. So they built dams and canals. They drained the floodwaters into rivers after Noah's flood. They gave these rudimentary carts. There's the kind of kiln they had. Here's a picture of a guy, an Anunnaki, bestowing the plow upon us. There's the kind of boats they showed us to make. The way they made power, one of the ways they did is they would put their pyramids, like on the Sinai, they had a huge array like this over water, or the Giza complex, again, Nile water underneath, pump the water up, the energy starts going upward. It's an explosion of hydrogen, which is released from potassium and HCl is added to that, and it's amplified out the top as electric, especially when the Earth energy changes just before dawn. All this stuff is sent up and out, where it's picked up by monoliths and spaceships and stuff like that, according to the accounts that the Anunnaki left and Sitchin translated. And they left us, we actually see bas reliefs, like on a temple in Abydos, showing a couple of astronauts inside, a command capsule on top. We see statues of astronauts in spacesuits. We see things that we think are probably from all different cultures, depicted in all different times of ways, of what we think are probably master computer programs. They definitely, as a perk, gave us wonderful crops, animals, and entheogens. They kept introducing grain seeds, goats, and sheep. That was a real big perk for us. And they gave us the means of, these people love to party. And they, Nimma brought all this stuff from Nibiru. She brought marijuana. She brought all kinds of grains for beer, different kinds of grapes, and she was trying things all from that she was gathering all the time. So that was a real big gift in terms of people being able to access spiritual realms. Social structure, they gave us cities, they managed cities, they had courts, libraries, they had proliferation of arts, they had schools, they had taxes. They gave us problems too. They gave us short lifespans. They had us obsessed with who's in charge. They modeled greed, racism, sexism, slavery, murder, war, propaganda, and ignorance. So they gave us some challenges also. In the dominator mindset, rulers will kill to rule. We've seen it in our history all over the world, even in the United States, people killing to rule. One big example that I have here on this picture is how Alexander of Macedon got his dad killed so he could take charge. They deliberately used religious wars since the launch tower at Babel, the so-called Tower of Babel, showed them that Marduk was about to unify the humans. They said, we're going to keep the humans pitted against each other, make sure they have different religions, they worship different gods, even if it's really the same us. And that's what the religions all started out with. The way they were just the way that the early Sumerians were in 10,000 years ago or so were taking care of their Anunnaki, bringing them food, carrying them around, and these feeding rituals for these lords just became religious rituals in the hands of different religions. So Marduk saw this happening, Satan saw this happening, and he decided this is the way to go. When I'm in charge of Earth, I'm going to keep everybody pitted against each other and stay on top. And he rewrote history with a pageant that showed not only, this is a big thing, not only is he all the planets, aspects of him, but all the other Anunnaki royals, that is all the other so-called gods, are aspects of me. So I'm Yahweh, this is what Satan says, and I'm Lucifer. And he actually claims to be each of those, and then as he takes over different places, he says he's their particular deity. And of course, Yahweh was trying to stave off Satan, Marduk, and Moses particularly, an Egyptian prince on his father's side, a Jew on his mother's side, an Israelite, conveyed the message to the Jews that you got to only worship me and no other gods, and I'm the only God, and so forth. The Mycenaean gods ran with Zeus, who was just another name for Marduk. Another problem, of course, that we got on the Anunnaki is unlimited greed, and it's well demonstrated by Inanna, who sexed her way, using drink, using whatever she had, until she at one point was queen of the Anunnaki world, on Earth. They kept our lives shortened when Adapa was brought to Nibiru. The king of Nibiru wanted to meet Adapa. Enki gave him a tablet saying, please don't keep my son. I know that you can keep him alive forever. You guys live forever. But he's running things for me, and he's my best friend. Please send my son home. Well, okay, he won't be able to have a real long life for thousands and thousands of years. Please send my son. Okay, so that's the story, perhaps apocryphal, of how come we have shortened lives. We got problems from the Anunnaki. They were into war. In their Indus Valley, they had huge thermonuclear war. They nuked Sodom and Gomorrah and Zoar. They nuked the Sinai spaceport. As Prince Marduk was closing in from Egypt, where he's known as Ra at the time, and his son was coming up through Canaan, Abraham, who was a spy in Sodom, said, hey, these guys have gone over to Satan, to Marduk. And so Yahweh asked permission of Anu to use nuclear deterrent. And so indeed they gave us a thermonuclear war. They nuked Sinai. There's still a big hole there. They also nuked the south bar of the Salt Sea. It became the Dead Sea. There's a hole in the Sinai where that circle is. However, the fallout cloud from the nuking of Sodom and Gomorrah and the Sinai blew over Yahweh's area too. It blew over Sumer. it wiped out all the humans in Sumer. The Anunnaki, of course, got in their boats and planes and got out of there, most of them. And Marduk's Babylon was far enough north that the cloud missed him, and he got his people out. But all Yahweh's people were wiped out in the area, and so they just left the planet. Basically, they said, okay, well, I guess Marduk won. Another problem that we got from the Anunnaki dominator mindset is slavery. It's still going on. Any society that practices this military conscription is practicing a form of slavery. Colonialism was enslaving whole nations throughout the world. There's slaves in the home, and in many places, wives are no more than slaves. And one of the big contributions of real problems the Anunnaki gave us was the idea of debt. That Nanar, who later becomes king of Nibiru, said, debt is a more intelligent way to bind people together than all these expensive other ways. And so these are all problems that we have to deal with, that the Anunnaki are taking credit for. But what are they going to do about it? Well, they could see what a mess they caused. And when the king of Nibiru, Anu, came to Earth, he concluded, and I'm going to read it exactly: mankind, not Anunnaki, to inherit the Earth is destined. Let us destiny help. Give mankind knowledge up to a measure. Give them the secrets of heaven and earth. Give them the laws of justice and righteousness. Teach them, then get out of here, depart. Well, who left? Who stayed? Anu in 70 CE, the king of Nibiru, told the royals, hey, I've had it. I'm out of here. I'm going to abdicate. I want everybody to come back, and we'll form a sort of a claque, and we'll even get Marduk to come back and see if we can unify. So come back to Nibiru, all of you. And Marduk, we are lifting the ban. You can come, and you can bring your armed followers. I'm going to choose my successor, and you should be in on this discussion. In the meantime, Marduk said, bow to me. I'm not gonna bow to you. You want me to bow to you? And honest, I would, leave. Get the hell out of here. Get the earth out of here. And so Marduk went back to Earth with his 300 followers, and he basically set up all. So this story goes, all these competing centers of power, as though they were autonomous, but they were all being run by hybrids who are in turn being run by his select followers, and ultimately run by Marduk until Nanar, as Allah, decided he was going to come back and send his agents back and challenge them. However, this is just a brief introduction. The Anunnaki royals have informed many people in contact with them that they're here again, and that Marduk has agreed to relinquish his terrible hold on things. He's truly sorry for the suffering he caused, he said, and he's going to make amends. And besides that, he's got an assassin that walks around with him to make sure he does do exactly that. So the story goes. I hope it's so. There's Marduk. He says he's sorry and he's going to make up for it. And the Anunnaki, one of our principal informants is Gillian Green, who is Thoth's niece. And she says that Thoth, Jesus, and other Anunnaki are here. They've got a big mess to clean up here, but it's going to happen. And we also have a pledge from Janet Kira Lessin, who embodies Nimma. She's the spirit of this empathy and wisdom of the feminine. This is what Marduk snuffed out when he snuffed out Minoan, the civilization, with his Mycenaean Zeusism. But this is what wants to come back: partnership. And Nimma, Janice, Lilith, what do you got to say?
Oh, you want me? Well, I do have some things. I took some notes. First of all, the Anunnaki, they never left. They've always left somebody in control. Um, they control the narrative. So, and they always have to leave. There's some kind of agreement that they have to leave the information in plain sight, but then they confuse, they babble humanity, so we never know what's really going on. So right now we have such a confused narrative. It's like they're amping it up. And we know something big is about to come down, but they're always controlling the narrative. So they created the monarchy, the priesthood and the monarchies, the kingships, and those are the rulers that they've left in place. And they gave us all of our different forms of governance, religion. They divide and conquer us by all these different factions, different variables like governance, religion. They use gender, race, politics, the concept of countries, political parties. They've unleashed plagues periodically throughout time to call the population, control, the armies and the wars. So right now we have COVID. COVID's the latest in a series of plagues that it's behind the story of, what's it called? Pandora's box. And the Grim Reapers, they would go around to the different towns in the Dark Ages and before that, and they would spray outside of the towns, and the next day everybody had the plague. So we have a history of being divided and conquered by plagues and diseases. They use tribalism, they use money, they use greed and interest, biochemical warfare. So we've always been a slave. We're corporate economic slaves. And the best way to maintain slaveship or control over slaves is to make them think that they are free. So it's almost 1984. Highly recommend to reread the book and watch the movies. V for Vendetta. And right now there were three countries in Orwell's 84. I forget what they were called. They had Oceania or something like that. But the three countries are USA, China, and Russia. So they're pitting us against each other. And that's another divide and conquer. So that's a false narrative that these are separate, but ultimately the three factions will stab each other in the back. So somebody ultimately grabs the control of the entire planet. We're a big commodity in the universe. We have extraterrestrials are still with us. There's a secret space program, and a lot of people are being trafficked, and they're sent into space. They're used as fighters, sex slaves. Some of them are grunt workers. They're in these ships in the basement, and they're engineers and fixing, repairing. Some people have been sent off planet colonies outside of the solar system. So the reason why they don't, the people that are the demigods, the hybrids, which are the presidents and czars and kings like Putin and Trump, and anybody gets in power, they know who's going to be the president years and years in advance. There's really no election. Elections don't matter. It's all the agenda. Anyway, that's what I've included by interviewing thousands of researchers in the field, and so every time you turn around, they're using something to divide and conquer. So they use mask, not mask, Black Lives Matter, against everybody else that isn't that. And it's continually nonstop. They'll introduce a new religion. Over time, they brought in Mormonism, and just keep subdividing, conquer. There might be good intentions originally, but everything gets hijacked for war, and that's why they're burning down cities. Now they're sending in troops, and there'll be martial law, and then there'll be no more United States because we'll lose all of our rights. I don't know what to do, but I've looked at it. So does anybody have any questions?
I would say there's some questions here. One of the things to kind of kick it off a little bit, if people are, being conscripted, as it were, to be taken off planet or what have you type of thing, somebody must notice that they're missing. Or are they just gone for like a time window because time is like, they're gone for a year, but they're really only gone for 15 minutes type of thing? Or what's happening there? Because that would be a huge, obvious gap in reality for the average person, because the rest of it might seem too fanciful, or they're too far removed from reality to even see any of this stuff going on. And then second question is, if they're able to kind of create this divide and conquer mentality, they're not every single person that's out there beating it up in the streets. So how's a smaller Kabul able to get such a wider audience to actually just start to act crazy, let's say?
Wait, we got to break down your question into two parts. So first part,
Please.
uh, how do they take people off planet? Well, they had many things. They have a 20 and back program. They can, they have a huge homeless population in the world. They can, um, I have a friend that disappeared in the military, and then they'll say, well, I can't tell you where I am. I'll have to kill you. So they have a lot of people. They use the scientists. They have a brain drain. They're sending a lot of those people out into space. They get them to sign up. They volunteer. That's been going on for a long time. There's many, 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 many ways they can make people disappear. They can fake your death. They can say you were over in, a war zone, and sorry, your son or daughter is dead. So there's just as many ways you can imagine they can do it, and they get away with it because they've got control of the narrative, and anyway. So that's one thing. What was the second part of your story?
Was the
I mean,
fact,
your
like, let's say,
question.
like when you say like Black Lives Matters of picking just something out of thin air, if they sort of were the stimulus for it, how did they suddenly get so many extra thousands of like kind of innocent bystanders to suddenly start picking up rocks and participate when that wasn't in their demeanor, or they weren't, organized in a way to do that before this thing suddenly seemingly spontaneously occurred?
Well, people are pissed off from 400 years of slavery, and people are pissed off because they're poor, they don't have a living wage, they can't afford to eat. There's people that are just pissed off, and they're running that temper that underneath the undercurrent all the time anyway. So when you have something that happens, especially with Black Lives Matter, they did that with Kent State. They fired the first shot. I mean, you were covering Kent State, but that was like a false flag. They started it, and then they killed 4 people. So they can do that in any audience. They did that back. Well, Andrew Jackson did that. They shot a fire, but it was really one of Jackson's person. They said it was the other side. So it's really easy to control and manipulate an audience. It's really easy to control and manipulate humanity. And what we see right now is massive propaganda, which has divided us into blue and red. And so that is sparking a civil war. But that is, if you go back and look at it, it's just yet another manipulation. The gods did it. They got them to be on Enki's side and Enlil's side and Marduk's side. And, they always promise something. With us, you're gonna have 40 virgins when you die. With us, you're gonna when you retire, you get all these jewels that you conquered people, and you get part of the haul. There's always some kind of incentive, and the American incentive is that you're going to live the American dream. But the American dream is a fallacy, as we can see. And the people that get into the American dream and they have any kind of wealth have sold their souls. Like Tom Cruise and all kinds of people that are celebrities, they didn't get there without selling their souls and signing these contracts. So that's what we're discovering with all of our research. And we do many avenues. We do psychotherapy with people. We have whistleblowers come to us all the time. We do our own research back into the ancient. My husband's a super nerd. He's read 3 or 4 or 5,000 books, and we're both constantly researching. But in the end, you have to just pick a side. But at this point, there's so much propaganda. There's so much information and disinformation, and it's just been controlled and manipulated now for the last 10 years. It's gone in a whole different direction that I'm just sitting back to see. But it looks like what was planned was what do you call it, martial law, and we're about to go into martial law. I've seen the maps of here's the United States after we have the second Civil War, and it's divided into 5 or 6 countries. This is not good. I don't care what side you are, red or blue. The division of the United States of America into 5 or 6 countries. Now Russia won. now China won, because we do not have, it's only by our being the United States of America do we have this power. So that's what we did that to Russia. Sometimes the United States divided Russia, and this is all propaganda, and now they have bots, and they put it on Twitter, and they put it on all the social media. Whenever you post something, you're going to get 100 responses that are the opposite of your view. It's not human. It's like bots. And so they go in and anyway, I've seen some documentation on that. But the ultimate goal is the United States is going to be destroyed, and it's all based on mind control, manipulation, and political agendas, and um, manipulating us into basically self-destructing. So we're self-destructing. They didn't even have to pull a nuclear weapon. We're eliminating ourselves from any kind of viability as a world power. And we've got to stop it and turn around. But I think, I think we're too stupid to realize that the real puppet are these ancients, the Anunnaki, that set up the system, and they never want us to achieve equality with them, because they're all about control, manipulation, divide and conquer, because they are ultimately afraid that we will go in and eliminate them. So they're never going to give us the whole picture. They're just going to give us what they want us to know. And that was in the PowerPoint. They control the information at all times. I'm going to stop talking now.
Okay, no, that was
Oh yeah,
fun.
if I may,
Please, Sasha, please.
yes, there's this apocryphal story they say about the Anunnaki who got these two 9-year-old boys, and they were doing a test to see how they would handle each one. There was two stables, and each one had to clean. It was just filled to the top with horse manure, and one kid said, "I'm not going to do this. This is stupid." The other kid just dug and dug and dug. They interviewed him, and the kid that was digging and digging is, "What were you digging so for?" He said, well, with all this horse manure, there must be a pony in there somewhere. And so it's like that with the things that we're being challenged with today. If you look from my perspective, which is that of transcendental existentialism, the challenges that we're facing now are perfect, just perfect, to show us that we're all one, that we have ecological interests with others, that empathy and partnership are the way, that we have the science and technology and the smarts from our ancestors and the models of what they did and what is possible. And we have something else. We have what's called the M gene. All the people that we interview say that the extraterrestrials are amazed at how inventive, how original, how passionate we are. And so we don't have to bow down to anybody if there's extraterrestrials or not. We're us, and we're damn good. That's what I think.
No, that's a perfect way to add as a summation on our talk, because we're actually reaching the conclusion of our hour here. So that really zipped by pretty darn quick, I have to say. So that was really good, and I appreciate you being here with us today.
Oh, it's fun. Thanks.
Thank you for having us.